Hello everybody, it's me, Felix. Another month has passed. Same as always, we're gonna talk about all the books that I read. I did say in my last video that I had a reading slump, and I really did towards the end of the month. I still managed to read 7 books, and I'm kind of recovering from my slump. I've been a bit sick. I went on a weekend trip with some friends, and I ate some sketchy noodles like from a mall, and those really did bother my tummy for a while. And then I also slept in a very cold room, and then I just had a cold. It's well, and that sucks. I hate being sick, but I did kind of recover from my reading slump, so I guess you gotta see the positives there. Alright, some mixed feelings this month, I would say. Let's start with the first book. I read the Aeneid by Virgil. In German it's Aeneas. Well, this was very difficult for me to understand. Like Homer's works, basically. This is kind of a sequel to Homer's epics. What was the story? I looked it up. Like, Virgil was supposed to put the emperor of Rome in a good light. He was a Roman poet. He died before this was published, I think. I did kind of enjoy it in parts. I did enjoy the language. But yeah, these old epic poems, I think I would need to read a retelling of that to really get it. Especially in the fight scenes, when someone dies, and that happens a lot in this book because it's like about a war towards the end. It's very, very difficult to realize who is even who. Like, the way it's written, you don't even realize who's fighting and who killed who. It's very, very complicated. I did, however, appreciate this book nonetheless. I do feel like I'm getting better at reading this kind of stuff, like epic poems, and I have a couple more on my pile, so I'll sharpen my I don't know, I'll improve my skill at reading something like this. Next up, something very different. Blind Willow Sleeping Woman by Haruki Murakami. This is probably his longest short story collection. I did not dislike this. Some of the stories were very good. Some of the stories were almost offensively bad. Like, come on, man. I wrote down my least favorite and my favorite ones. New York mining disaster, a perfect day for kangaroos, and the year of spaghetti were so fucking bad that I feel almost, it's like a personal insult that they were even published. It's ridiculous. Like, it really does sound like a 14-year-old wrote this. But then on the other hand, we have Birthday Girl, The Seventh Man, The Rise and Fall of Sharpie Cakes, and Chance Traveler, which I really did like. I think this book, I don't know, it's for a short story collection, it's 436 pages. It's quite long for a short story collection, and I don't know why he made it this long. You could have scrapped half of the stories easily. I don't know who proofread this, but this should have been 200 pages, and I think that would have been fine. But as I said, some of the stories I really did like. Then I was really excited for this, Mercury by Kavan, which it was a very interesting experience reading this. If you're new to this channel, Kavan is one of my all-time favorite authors. I've only read one book of hers, because until quite recently it was very, very difficult to even obtain her books that are not that famous, which is Ice. I read Ice. I absolutely love it. I think I read it 3 times. I'm looking over there because it's on the shelf there. And so yeah, I was very excited to read this. I think if there would be one book to sum up this genre, it would probably be Ice by Anna Kavan, because that's probably the book that I talked about the most on here. And yes, this book left me puzzled. I did not immediately love it, and then I thought, well, my reaction is exactly what I would have expected from a writer like Anna Kavan. So this story is basically very, very, very similar to Ice. It's the same story, basically. And this was published posthumously, and I'm pretty sure this was probably just like a first draft for Ice. And I don't know if she would even have wanted this to be published, because it does seem a bit less refined than Ice. It doesn't really have those elements that make Ice so appealing for me. For example, the characters do have names. In Ice, no character has a name. And I would almost describe this as like psychedelic literature. I felt like when I was reading Thomas Pynchon for the first time, it's a very, very, very different contents of the book, but the puzzled feeling and this labyrinthine, clandestine writing that really, it feels like you have to solve a riddle or something. And I don't think, as for Thomas Pynchon, I think it's not always that deep, but it's definitely something that I would need to read multiple times in order to like really get it. Those liminal spaces, like those pictures that were like on the internet a couple years ago, the back rooms and stuff like that. That's something that I really vibed with, that aesthetic, and I feel like this is a liminal book. It really feels like you're always in a transitional space. And I wrote down regarding the psychedelic literature, if Ice feels like a dream, then this book feels more like a bad trip. It doesn't really have all those dreamlike qualities, and it feels more like you took too much acid and now you're fucking seeing like zombies or something. Nonetheless, I think this was very, very interesting, and I would even say this is essential to really understanding what Ice is all about, It's definitely not my favorite book by Anna Kavan of the 2 I read, but I have 3 more that I'm gonna read soon, but definitely essential in my opinion. Next up, I read Frederick Backman. Britt-Marie Was Here is the English title. I've seen him a lot on BookTube. A lot of people seem to like A Man Called Ove. And I was, after like a couple more challenging books that I've read, I was looking forward to reading something a bit more light. But I actually really did not like this book at all. I think it was terrible. The story itself, I don't think was terrible. I think the story was quite endearing. It had like a movie-like quality to it, I think. And it was made into a movie. And I could see that as a positive. Like, it's very visual. You can really kind of see things play out like in a movie. But it also makes it predictable. And I could even say, if I would want to lean out the window a little bit more, that it's kind of a cash grab. You just write a book, a successful author just writes a book that is pretty easy to make into a movie so that he can make more money. But that's an evil, that's a foul accusation. I have no way to prove that, but it did feel a little bit like that. Let's get to the main issue I had. Britt-Marie, the protagonist of this book, is the most fucking obnoxious person I could ever imagine. She probably has some kind of like OCD or autism or something like that. It's never really addressed, And I think it's meant to be like that she's just like kind of quirky. But yeah, definitely some hardcore OCD going on. Everything has to be super tidy, everything has to be exactly how she wants it. She sticks to all these manners and all these rules, and she always thinks about like what are other people gonna think. And then it's always played off like, oh, like, no, I wouldn't care about what other people think, but then she acts exactly like that. Or like, oh, no, I wouldn't have this racist thought, and then she kind of implies that she has it too. And, you know, I think as an expose, that is a valid character, you know? But throughout the book, she constantly crosses everybody's boundaries. She constantly tells people what to do. She bosses everybody around. She makes everybody oblige to her own rules, and she never gets in trouble for it. There's no character progression at all. Everybody just, like, I really, really disliked that. She constantly behaves like she's better than everybody else. She knows everything better, you know? She goes to the small village and just expects everybody to like follow her, like, and kind of adapt to her, and they all do. That really pissed me off. She never gets in trouble. It's never resolved. It's never addressed. It could have been a nice ending if she would like get over her fucking control freakish behavior, but it's never addressed and she never changes, and I did not like that. Yeah, no, I think if someone gives me A Man Called Ove as a present, then I think I'm gonna read it. But I think that was it for me with Fredrik Backman. I really thought that was a giant flaw of this book. And if, you know, if it played out differently, if she had some character progression, I think it would have been a nice, light-hearted, lovely book, you know? I didn't hate the story. But yeah, no, not for me. And yeah, I really don't understand why people don't see this as an issue. Well, okay, let's calm down a little bit. My reread was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This, I think I went through a story with this book that a lot of people went through. I read this when I was, I think, 19 or 20. And I might have reread this before. I'm not quite sure. I don't really remember. I don't think so, actually. But yeah, so I read this many years ago, and had this moment of like, well, Paulo Coelho, he's a great writer. This is a great book. I really do think the story is great. The kind of spiritual aspect that all of Coelho's work has, I like. But if you read any of his other books, you can easily see that he's a terrible writer. It's just like that. I think when I read this for the first time, I bought like 5 or 6 Paulo Coelho books, and I read all of them, and I gave almost all of them away. I think I kept one other one, or maybe 2. Yeah, I kept Veronica Decides to Die, which also was a cool book with a cool concept. It was just way too short, in my opinion. And he has one where he describes him doing the Camino Santiago, which I also walked when I was 20, and that one was just weird as fuck. And yeah, so I had this moment of disillusionment with this author that I think a lot of people went through. But I think in this book he manages to blend prose and spirituality in a very nice way, and I think it really works. And I do feel like my rating kind of is affected by having read his other works, but I do think this is a nice book, especially if you're like a young person, like a teenager or in your early 20s. I do think this is, for me this was a book that really influenced me back then. I even wanted to recreate his travels to an extent. I was not planning on hiking through the Sahara Desert, but I did plan to take in a ferry from Gibraltar to Tanger. That never happened, but maybe it will in the future, who knows. Yeah, never got around to that. If I ever do it, I'm gonna take video of it, but I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. Next up, I read Der Butt, which is a fish. It doesn't mean your backside. It's a flounder. This weird fish, like the flat one. I did film my review for this separately right after I finished it because it's quite complex. This is an amazing book. This was probably my favorite read of the month, but this was also a book that you need to put in a ton of work. And I think everything else I was gonna say, I'm gonna say in the other clip. So I'll show you that now. Hello, it's me from about 1.5 weeks in the past, and I just finished Der Butt, The Flounder by Günter Grass. And I feel like I should do my review now because it all needs to be. This book is so incredibly dense that I should go into it while it's all fresh. I just finished it like 2 minutes ago. And yeah, I think this might be probably the most challenging book to review that I ever featured on this channel because there's just so much in it. I really liked it. I'll go into it. So first, this edition I found in a free little bookshelf library, and it turned out to be a signed first edition, which under normal circumstances would be worth quite a bit of money, but it has a tear here in the back, and for like signed books that diminishes the resale value quite a lot. But also I would never sell it. Why would I do that if I have something like this? It's a treasure. So, quick history about Günter Grass. His most famous book is The Tin Drum, which is one of my favorite books of all time. He's one of my favorite German writers. And he was quite an interesting figure on the literary landscape, I would say. He outed himself in that book here, Skinning the Onion, which I haven't read yet. He outed himself that he used to be in the SS under Hitler, and that is definitely, so he has a Nazi past, and he goes into that quite a lot, and really like distanced himself from that, and really I think, in my opinion, did a good job on like working that stuff out. He later joined the Social Democrat Party, which at that time was quite left-wing, now is more centrist, I would say. And also was a big advocate for women's rights and also for gay rights. And that is definitely an element that is in this book also. And yeah, this book, it's a postmodern encyclopedic novel. So there's a lot of, it's incredibly dense. It has so many elements, which I think it's, I don't know, I'd like to see another, someone else review this book in depth because I think it is incredibly difficult. So, the title, The Flounder, is inspired by an old Danish fairy tale called The Fisherman and His Wife, where the fisherman fishes up a flounder that knows how to talk and gives advice, kind of like an oracle, and his wife uses it for like materialistic purposes, and Grass interprets that as a misogynist fairy tale, and that is like the loose structure for this. There's the fish is a character in this book, and he's on a trial for you don't really know what he's on trial for, but that is one of the structuring elements of this novel, that he's on a feminist trial because he kind of founded the patriarchy. It sounds so stupid if you say it out loud, but he kind of was a central figure in assigning the stereotypical gender roles, which is also a big element of this book, the stereotypical male and the stereotypical female role. And this is from 1979, by the way, so nowadays that is a very big discussion, but also back then, that is definitely a different perspective from someone who wrote this 40 years ago. So yeah, that is one of the structuring elements. The other structuring element is a pregnancy of one of the main characters. The fisherman and his wife kind of are also characters in this book, even though it's very different from the fairy tale. But the narrator himself is the fisherman, and his wife Elizabeth is pregnant. And the chapters are structured by the months of her pregnancy. So you have 9 chapters for every month. And yeah, the book really needs those elements because it has, it's very loose. It doesn't really have a plot that you follow, and those elements function nicely to kind of give any sort of structure. Because you kind of need to just let it flow a bit, you can't, I think if you really try to get a plot out of this or really understand everything, then you're gonna get frustrated very easily. But these are 2 central elements. So the characters, how do I even start describing them? Basically, we go into local history here a lot, which is also a central element in every Günter Grass novel that I've read so far. He was from Danzig, which today is Gdansk, a city that used to be on the eastern border of Germany, and after the 2 world wars got reassigned to Poland. And they kind of had their own local language, which a lot of, before Germany got united, in 150, 200 years ago, a lot of places had their own language that was quite distinguished. Also, this language had another dialect, and so Kashubian, I don't know. There was also quite a lot of that in the east. A lot of different ethnic groups, and they kind of had their own local history. And Grass goes back until the Neolithic age, until the Stone Age, kind of over 9 different female characters and also some male characters, and they basically are like reincarnations. I don't know if this is gonna sell the book. This is one of the weirdest books I've ever read, by the way. So all of the characters kind of function as one characters, just set a couple hundred years apart each. And some of them are famous historical figures, like poets and activists, but it's I'm trying, all right. And then another element is the cuisine, the food, which was also one of his main inspirations, from what I understand, that he wanted to write a book about the local cuisine, which is strange. They eat all kinds of animal parts. He's very, very good at describing repulsing, gross things, some excrements, and some of the chapters are really quite gross and made me flinch a little bit. He's very good at graphically describing that kind of stuff, and it gets very vulgar. It gets very primitive. This is also something that I like in his work, that element of rawness, and this book also has a lot of poems, usually between 2 little sub-chapters there's a poem. His poems are really weird. I didn't really like them. They don't rhyme, but I guess they kind of function as like, you know, you get kind of like a summary of what happens in the chapter in the poems, because this book can be quite hard to follow. You know, he switches between characters that go through different centuries all the time. So sometimes you have this primal mother that had 3 breasts, which is like the central female character that everybody else descends from. And then a page later you have someone from the 1400s, and then you have someone from modern times, sometimes like within the same sentence or the same paragraph. Which, if you just really like let it flow, it's not that complicated to follow. I usually read multiple books at the same time. The last 1.5 weeks I've only read this and nothing else. It is very, very intense, and you really need to take your time with this. Yes. My favorite, or one of my favorite chapters of the book was towards the end, which is, it's the 8th month, and that one is just one story. It's like, I think it's like 40 pages. It functions like a short story, narrated by 4 lesbians, who found like kind of a lesbian cult, and then they want to defy all gender norms, which also is something that I think was quite progressive for that time. But also they don't really succeed, and they just go back into the old binary stereotypical system. But I think that maybe he published it as a short story, I'm not sure, but that I think was a very nice story. Yes, so if you would like to read this book, this has been translated into English. To really get anything from this, you should definitely acquaint yourself a little bit with German history, with local history. This is, if you like Günter Grass, if you're a Günter Grass fan, if you read some of the other stuff, then I would recommend this to you. Definitely don't start with this. If you start with this, if this is your first Günter Grass novel, I don't think you'll pick up another one. This is something, I think, to get anything from this, you need to know a little bit about him and his work, and also about, German pre-war history. But definitely, I'm not sure what to rate this. I really, really like this. It's not a 5 stars, but it is definitely something that will stay with me for a very long time. And also I feel like a sense of achievement after having finished this. This is about 550 pages, and this took me basically all month to read. But yeah, weird book, definitely a hidden gem in my opinion. And that's it. Back to future Felix. Thank you very much for listening. And I also went to the Günter Grass house like a couple days after I finished this, or I think the day after. And that's in my last video, if you're interested in that. Yes, that's it. And then the last book that I read was Atonement by Ian McEwan. And in the first half of reading this, I was kind of slumping really hard. Like that was like right when the reading slump hit me. And I kind of took like a long time to read. This is in 3 parts or 4 parts. The fourth part is really short. But for the first part, I took like a couple weeks. And then for the last part, I took probably like 1 week. So I had a hard time getting into it. But I had an experience kind of similar to when I was reading Brighton Rock by Graham Greene. I could tell that it was really well written and that great book, but I just could not really get into it. I think I will reread this. I did, towards the second half, I really did get into it. The first part just has a lot of characters. I didn't understand who was who. I only read like a couple pages per day. I think if I would have taken more time to read this, in one sitting, then I would have been able to follow more. But yeah, this was it the Washington Post? I think 1 or 2 years ago, some American newspaper published like a list from other successful authors. I don't know who was on there. I think Stephen King and some other people, and asked them to make a list of their favorite 25 books of the last however many years. And this was the book that was mentioned the most, and that kind of made me interested in it. I read The Cement Garden. I think this is probably his most famous work. Not sure, but yeah, it's a great book. I really do think it's written amazingly well. I think this is a book if you want to be a writer. I'm saying that without actually being a writer myself, but I do dabble in writing sometimes. But if you read this from the perspective of someone who writes, then you can see what I find quite fascinating, the aspects of storytelling. You know, what stuff you leave out, what stuff you take in. This is set over the course of multiple decades. And yeah, just like the stuff that you don't tell, that I find quite interesting. The ending was insane. The ending actually like swept me off my feet. It was great. I'm not gonna spoil anything because this is a book that you really should not spoil, I think. But big recommendation for everybody who likes a dark, twisted story, I guess. And yeah, only 7 books this month, so this might be a little bit of a shorter video. But yeah, that's it. I think I'm done with most of my uni work for this semester. It's already the new semester, and I think as soon as I'm done with everything, I can take a bit more time to read and also to put a little bit more effort into my videos, which I would like to do. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Love you all. See you in the next one. Goodbye.